once we get to the final two, which is unpredictable to predict, we then have the idea, the notion of this being quite an open race going into the hustings around the country. And I remember covering the race between Jeremy Hunt and Boris Johnson back in 2019, and both men put in a huge amount of effort, but really it was cosmetic in that Boris Johnson was pretty much always nailed on to take and win the party membership and win that race. And he ran it really decisively. Whereas this time around, it really does seem to be far wider open in terms of who might make the final two and then who might win the competition.
Well, as we're talking there, Beth, we have got the first live pictures in of the committee room where we're going to be hearing the announcements from Sir Graham Brady of the 1922 committee, the first round of the ballot in the Conservative leadership contest. Of course, electing the next leader, but also the next Prime Minister as well. And you can see some people just... The first people to take their seats in that room now are starting to make their way in. About 5 minutes or so until we're expecting that announcement, which we'll, of course, bring you straight away. In the meantime, Beth, I just wonder what you make of the tone of the campaign so far. All the MPs that I've interviewed today have said that they want to make sure that... actually, I'm just going to pause there because we can see Penny Mordaunt. Penny, how confident are you? Smiles from Penny Mordaunt. They're flanked by Andrea Leadsom as she walks through Central Lobby. Smiles from Penny Mordaunt as well, perhaps unsurprisingly, as it does feel like she is getting some campaign momentum, doesn't it? Let's go back to you now, Beth. And Beth, it's interesting, that's the second time we've seen Penny Mordaunt walk through Central Lobby. Perhaps a sign of someone who might be quite confident, I guess, going into the first round?
Backers, and she is with Rishi Sunak, the only one that's officially gone over the 30 vote threshold of public backers. So she is now firmly into second place. She had a successful launch this morning, and you've seen the polling this afternoon putting her as the party member's favourite and now the bookies' favourite. So for Penny Mordaunt, as I was saying, the dark horse, the rather unknown in this race, this has been a very, very positive day for her and her team. But let's see where Liz Truss comes out too. She will come out, no doubt, fighting tomorrow. And also, there's still big cabinet backers still to declare, and that will be watched with interest too. But in the imminent moments, what we will be looking at is we'll be looking to see, as Sam was saying, who is in the drop zone. When you look at the publicly declared backers of MPs, Nadhim Zahawi and Jeremy Hunt both on 14 supporters, Suella Braverman on 16, Kemi Badenoch on 24. So we're looking to see with those four who will make it through. I think it's pretty nailed on, to be honest, that Jeremy Hunt probably won't make it. Someone close to him saying to me the numbers were looking pretty dicey for Jeremy Hunt, but that perhaps, as I said earlier, an opportunity for Penny Mordaunt, because it was she who supported Jeremy Hunt back in 2019. And you were saying, Sophie, about Andrea Leadsom, Dame Andrea Leadsom, former Cabinet Minister, going through Central Lobby with Penny Mordaunt. Andrea Leadsom introduced Penny Mordaunt on stage today, just as Penny Mordaunt introduced Jeremy Hunt back in 2019 when he was the guy that went through to the final two and in that run-off with Boris Johnson. So, you know, I would suggest, I would hope or expect for Penny Mordaunt's sake that if she backed him back then, once he drops out of the race, will he come in behind her, and can he bring other supporters with him?
I guess that's it, isn't it? Because the people who drop out of the race is interesting, not just because they're no longer in it, but of course that question, as you were saying there, Beth, about where their supporters go. All eyes on the 1922 committee, which is filling up, people fanning themselves. I guess, Beth, what are your sort of predictions as we wait for that result? It's now 5 o'clock, so we're expecting it at any moment.
Well, I mean, I hate making predictions in politics because it's so changeable. But look, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that we're going to have 4 to 5 people nailed on to go through, and it's a question of who drops out. And then once that happens, how quickly the race tightens. The thing I'm looking at in the next couple of days is how quickly, or does the right of the party coalesce around Liz Truss as their favoured candidate? And can Penny Mordaunt keep momentum, or will people that don't want Liz Truss then move to Rishi Sunak? That's what I'm interested in. They're coming in.
Well, you can see there the Graham Brady. Let's have a listen. He is about to come in and announce the results of the first round of voting in the vote to be the next leader of the Conservative Party and also the next Prime Minister. Let's listen in.
It's what I prepared earlier. Good evening. Good evening. I can now announce the result of the ballot held this afternoon. I'll read the names of the candidates in alphabetical order with the number of votes secured by that candidate. Badenoch, 40. Braverman, 32. Hunt, 18. Mordaunt, 67. Sunak, 88. Truss, 50. Tugendhat, 37. Zahawi, 25. Therefore, under the rules that we agreed for this ballot, 2 candidates will be eliminated, Jeremy Hunt and Nadhim Zahawi. The others are all able to go forward to the second ballot, which takes place tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you. Because we've got votes coming at 17 minutes past, I think 3 votes, it's time for the cameras to leave the room, and we will start our hustings at the end of the last of the divisions. Thank you.
We're going to have to win.
We'll do that then as well. Okay. Let's do it then, because we've got all of them.
Well, they are the results. 2 candidates eliminated, Jeremy Hunt, who managed to get 18 votes, and Nadhim Zahawi on 25. And that means that 6 of the 8 candidates progress. Rishi Sunak topping the poll with 88 votes, followed by Penny Mordaunt in second place on 67, and Liz Truss in third on 50. But let's bring in our political editor, Beth Rigby. Beth, what do you make of it?
Well, that is an interesting result, Sophie, in that there are 6 going through to the next round. And I think there's an expectation that maybe Suella Braverman wouldn't make it through. But anyway, look, you've got 6 out of the 8 going through. What's interesting about that is look at Rishi Sunak, 88. His team are going to be delighted with that. What that shows is the momentum for the former Chancellor there. And then Penny Mordaunt coming in on 67 when she had publicly declared 34. I mean, she's nearly doubled her numbers there. She will be delighted as well. What's interesting about Liz Truss there on 50, look at how on the right of the party the vote is still splitting. You've got Liz Truss on 50, Kemi Badenoch on 40, Suella Braverman on 32. You'll remember Priti Patel didn't want to enter the race in the end, or chose not to, because she was worried about the split on the right of the party. And I think that split on the right is maybe holding Liz Truss back in terms of those votes. And finally, you've got Tom Tugendhat. He is the choice of the One Nation group of Conservatives, coming in on 37, having had publicly declared 22 votes. Now, what's interesting about Tom Tugendhat when you look at Penny Mordaunt is that she is positioning herself as a conviction Brexiteer and a One Nation Conservative. So she's clearly aiming to try and take the Tugendhat votes, even when he finally has to concede or gets voted out. And also those 18 votes for Jeremy Hunt. As I was saying, he was the guy that backed, or she was the woman that backed him back in 2019. I expect he will fall into her camp now. So the race really on. And actually, at the moment, the Stop Sunak campaign isn't doing very well in terms of the right of the party being split across those three candidates, Truss, Badenoch and Braverman, and how might that wash out in the ballots tomorrow. But for Sunak and Mordaunt, they will be absolutely delighted, I imagine, with their showing in the first round.
And Beth, I'm interested to know your thoughts. You were speaking before about the three candidates, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss, who perhaps you have a sense they have the momentum pulling away slightly from the others. How important is that race for second place with Penny Mordaunt on 67 votes compared to 50 for Liz Truss?
Well, Sophie, for me, that race is the most interesting and actually the one everyone's talking about when you catch up with the campaigns and you talk to MPs. Because if you're Rishi Sunak and you are out front, as he is, you've got to start to try and think, who am I best placed to beat in the final hustings with party members? And at the moment, when you're looking at the polling of YouGov members and the bookies, Penny Mordaunt is not the person that Rishi Sunak will want to face in the final round. In fact, one of his camp or MP supporters told me that yesterday. They were quite explicit about that. So what we're going to get onto soon is, as this shakes out and as this contest really begins to narrow down, you've got to have a look at how much momentum has Rishi Sunak got, and can he afford to start lending votes from his campaign to others in order to perhaps block Penny Mordaunt. Now, his camp insists to me that that is not what they're doing, that this race is too wild and wide and it's all focused on just getting Rishi Sunak as many votes as they can. But as it gets to the final stages, which could come as early as Monday, it could be decided, it could run on to Wednesday next week, that will certainly be the considerations that some of the operations behind these candidates will be making. I remember back in 2019, when we knew that Boris Johnson was going to get over the finish line. And really, in terms of the other two, there was Michael Gove, another Brexiteer. There was Jeremy Hunt, a Remainer turned Brexiteer. And it ended up with, I think, Jeremy Hunt getting 75 votes and Michael Gove getting 73. And that was widely discussed afterwards, the way in which the Johnson camp had helped slightly stump Michael Gove by lending votes to Jeremy Hunt to get him over the line and not Michael Gove, still Boris Johnson's arch enemy, out of the race.
Also, Beth, it's interesting to reflect as well on the number of candidates who are still in it. There were 8 candidates in the race at the beginning of the day. There are still 6 in it as well. Only Jeremy Hunt and Nadhim Zahawi falling at the first hurdle. Do you think that's going to impact the tone of the race going forward?
I do think that's interesting. I mean, there was a discussion at the beginning of this when Boris Johnson was forced to concede that he couldn't carry on as Prime Minister on Thursday last week. Immediately we got on to how quickly are they going to be able to whittle down the candidates? Will the party try and do this from before recess? And then there was a discussion in the party about thresholds that they would set in order to try and whittle this race down quickly. You know, we started off with 11 runners and riders, with Priti Patel a potential 12th. And, you know, after the first ballot, we're down to 6. People might have expected that to be slightly lower, but they didn't have as big a threshold, as high a threshold, I should say, as perhaps people thought might happen at the beginning. There was some talk before the number 90-20 decided the rules, for example, that MPs would need 10% of the parliamentary party to get past the first ballot. That would have been 36 MPs. Now, if they'd applied that rule, Suella Braverman would have automatically been out, and Tom Tugendhat would have just scraped through. But they didn't decide to do that. I think there was a sort of view from MPs as well, like, we want our candidates to have a run at it. But let's see what happens tomorrow and how it shakes out. But 6 at this stage that's quite a lot of runners and riders still. And as I said, one of the interesting things when you look at that list is how the right of the party really has not settled on one candidate yet.
Really interesting to hear your analysis. Beth, will have more from Beth as the evening wears on and we digest the first indication we've had of where Conservative MPs are at. Rishi Sunak topping the poll in the first ballot with 88 votes, Penny Mordaunt in second place with 67 and Liz Truss in third on 50. Meanwhile, Nadhim Zahawi and Jeremy Hunt are out. Well, the Conservative MPs have had their say, but after it's whittled down over the next week and next week as well, a YouGov poll of 879 party members has put Penny Mordaunt way ahead, with 27% of party members saying they would like to see her as taking over from Boris Johnson as the next Prime Minister. And this matters, of course, because it is members who are going to be voting after the MPs have had their say. Well, let's go to Sam Coates now, shall we, our Deputy Political Editor, to try and reflect on that result. Only two eliminated. Rishi Sunak, as expected, topping the polls. But Penny Mordaunt, really, it feels as if she's racing up the inside track to come to second place.
Look, as we've been saying all afternoon, it's the Penny Mordaunt's numbers that are clicking up. And it's really extraordinary. She just launched her campaign this morning. As one of her team was just reflecting to me, they didn't have the kind of infrastructure that the Rishi Sunak campaign, the Liz Truss campaign have had, and yet here she is in second place, poised potentially to enter the ballot in under a week's time, and this despite not being in the cabinet, not having spent a great deal of time in the cabinet, and both of her rivals currently or formerly holding, main rivals holding the great offices of state. When I look at those numbers that were on the screen a moment ago, two things strike me. First of all, you can see the number of Rishi Sunak votes going up. But I couldn't tell you, looking at that screen, those results, exactly who's going to be in the final two. Why? Because the number that surprised me the most in that result was Liz Truss. Liz Truss got 50. She's one of the two big figures in this race, and she ended up with a lower number, I think, than many would have expected. You would have expected potentially Liz Truss to be within single digits of Penny Mordaunt, but no, she was down. She was down at 50 votes. So we're having this conversation about who's going to be in the final two. Liz Truss lower than you think, but the other thing that means that you can't say what's going to happen in this race is that Rishi Sunak currently on 88 MPs in that ballot. But the question is, how many other people then come behind him who aren't already supporters of Rishi Sunak? How much higher can he take that? Is it the case that the Braverman votes and the Kemi Badenoch votes and some of the Tugendhat votes all go behind Liz Truss or Penny Mordaunt, and actually over time people are able to overtake Rishi Sunak? There's everything to play for. Liz Truss doing slightly less better than I expected. Penny Mordaunt storming ahead, and she has the endorsement and the support of the membership by double-digit margins, according to that YouGov poll that we released just after lunch. And you've just got that sense that this race is very, very live indeed. I
think we can actually bring in the YouGov poll that you were talking about now, shall we? Because that poll, it was a poll of 879 party members, and it did put Penny Mordaunt well ahead, to be honest, of her rivals. You can see there the question asked was, which, if any, of the following candidates do you most want to replace Boris Johnson? Penny Mordaunt in front on 27%, Kemi Badenoch in second place on 15%, with Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss in third place on 13%. And it does feel as if this potentially affected the momentum of the race.
Yeah, so this is what happens in the final round with the Tory members. There are two big things, two big stories that you're looking at on your screen. The first is the momentum for Penny Mordaunt, and the other is that Penny Mordaunt hasn't been at the top table of British politics for that long. But the number of people who say they don't know about this in this race is very, very small. If you put together don't knows and not sure's and none of the above, then actually what you're having is a clear message from the Tory membership, as David Davis has been arguing today, effectively looking like they're making the argument for a clean start. They don't want Rishi Sunak. He's been in Boris Johnson's cabinet. He's been at his side for much of the premiership. They don't want Liz Truss, who's incorporated so many of those Boris Johnson backers, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Nadine Dorries, who've been dominating their airwaves, punching the lights out of Rishi Sunak. They don't seem to want either of those. They seem to want a little bit of a clean start. That's why on every measure, whenever you go head-to-head according to this YouGov poll, Penny Mordaunt beats all of the potential rivals. The only question at the moment seems to be, to me, who would be in the final two, potentially with Penny Mordaunt. Is it Rishi Sunak, who's got the momentum at the moment? But I suspect that there is some softness to the vote. Questions about how many of the people that haven't declared, how many of the people whose first choice drops out ends up behind him, and then how many add on to Liz Truss's surprisingly low number.
Interesting stuff. I'm going to come back to you in a minute, Sam, but I think we can just bring in some of the reaction that we're getting from some of the candidates. We've got some tweets that have been coming in reaction to the results so far. Firstly, from Tom Tugendhat, who, of course, managed to stay in the race. He tweeted to say, "This is a fantastic result. I'm delighted to be going through to the next round with the momentum we need to change this country for the better." Tom Tugendhat picking up 37 votes and therefore crossing the 30-vote threshold that was needed. We've also had a reaction from Liz Truss, from a spokesperson from Liz Truss, who said, "Now is the time for colleagues to unite behind the candidate who will cut taxes, deliver the real economic change we need from day one, and ensure that Putin loses in Ukraine." They go on to say that Liz has the experience to deliver the benefits of Brexit from day one, grow our economy and support working families. So a bit of reaction from some of the candidates. Apologies if you're going to hear the bell. There's lots of votes going on, so we are going to be hearing that bell ringing a fair bit. We're joined now by two people who just voted in the leadership contest. Thank you very much for being with us, David Davis and Daniel Finchley. Thank you very much for being with us. Can you first just tell us who you voted for and why?
I voted for Jeremy Hunt. He's a friend. I like him very much. I think he has a lot of experience in government. A very credible former foreign secretary. Obviously, I'm very disappointed that he's been knocked out. But I've been very impressed over the last few days with Penny Mordaunt. She has performed very well on television and in the hustings. I'm going back at 5:15 to hear the hustings, but at the moment, a lot of my association senior officers and members are saying back Penny Mordaunt.
One of them could be standing beside you as well. You, of course, have been supporting Penny Mordaunt. What did you make of the result?
Well, it's a very good result for us. I mean, always these early results with a large number are spread out, but we're much closer to Rishi Sunak than we thought we'd be. We've done better than our estimate. It reinforces the polls that you've been talking about today. As Daniel says, ordinary members and officers in associations all saying that they want a reset, and that's what came out of the polls. What's looking like in this set of numbers is that the Parliamentary Party wants a reset too. So that's good for us. I'm
very interested in, because obviously all eyes are on the people who come up top, but actually what is also interesting is what happens to the vote to the people who are eliminated. Jeremy Hunt, obviously one person who didn't make the cut this time round. Did you always suspect that Penny Mordaunt was going to pick up your vote, or has something happened more recently to make you change your minds?
I think I can only say what I said before, which is I have been very, very surprised at how well she has run the campaign, how effective she's been at the hustings and on the media. And more of my members are sending me clips of her performance when she eviscerated Mrs. Rayner on the debate. She's really strong, strong conviction, good personality, and I think she would make a very credible Prime Minister. We've been through a bit of a bruising, and we need to come together as a party. And I think she certainly has the attributes to bring the Conservative Party together, yes.
I'm just going to pause you for a minute because we do have some reaction from Jeremy Hunt. He's tweeted to say, "I want to thank my incredible team of loyal and talented supporters who put their faith in me. It's become obvious to me you only get one big shot at this, and I had mine in 2019. He goes on to say, "Nevertheless, it's clear that our party has an exciting future with the amazing array of talent on offer in this contest, and I feel confident we're on track to win back trust."
Can I just say that's
yes.
characteristic of a man. Yeah, he's a really nice gentleman, and it shows.
How do you think the tone of the debate has been so far?
Well, there's been a bit of black propaganda, of course, but actually it is now devolving down to real arguments about policy. I mean, all of the people who are staying in the race have been pitching their policy line. Now, to be frank, it's been a bit of a Dutch auction over tax cuts for a lot of them, and I think that'll favour my candidate, because Penny today, at that astounding launch, laid out a real programme for growth, a real programme for cutting inflation, a real programme for taking our country on. So I think the debate actually is turning into a healthy debate about what we want for the country, and that's a good thing.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess Rishi Sunak supporters would argue that he is the person who at least is setting out a realistic vision, and perhaps others are throwing around, shall we say, some unfunded tax cuts, or tax cuts that seem to be funded by cutting a few civil servants here and there, which won't obviously go anywhere near to raising the kind of money that you need. I mean, would you say that that's something that at least Rishi Sunak is trying to, I guess, put a bit of fiscal discipline into the debate?
What I would say is what was also written in the Times newspaper today, which is how incredibly diverse and effective the candidates are. I'm very proud that we've got such high-quality candidates coming through to be leader of the Conservative Party. Mr. Sunak is credible, as are many of the others. But I think, as I said before, you have to listen to what your association members are saying. And some of your officers running your local party. It seems to me that amongst the membership that's ultimately going to decide the outcome of this, it seems to me that Conservative Party members are moving towards Penny Mordaunt.
One final question to you, David Davis. We've seen an extraordinary few weeks and months with people resigning over Boris Johnson's actions, others backing him. Penny Mordaunt was a bit like a submarine. She was pretty quiet, wasn't she? Do you think that could come across as being a bit tactical at a time when other people were at least making a stand for their opinion on Boris Johnson? Did she have one eye on the leadership contest?
No, I think it's almost the reverse of that. When I was in the cabinet with Penny, I've already said to you earlier that she was tough and fierce and brave, and bluntly, I think that's one of the reasons that Boris didn't put her in his cabinet. And if she'd been in this cabinet, I think you might have heard a lot more. But as a junior minister, it's 10 times as tough to make an impact on that. She's somebody who's got a very, very strong sense of moral value, and that's already showing through today.
OK, thank you both very much. Thank you for letting us know how you voted today. Interesting stuff. Well, there you go. Just 2 MPs, of course, but it does feel as though Penny Mordaunt is the candidate who's had more momentum today than the others. She has managed to squeeze Liz Truss into 3rd place, taking 2nd place on that first ballot behind Rishi Sunak. We can go now to our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who's just over the road from us in Portcullis House. John, what are MPs telling you?
Well, obviously, attention now focuses on what happens next. And to help us, I'm joined by, I hope he doesn't mind, a grandee, a veteran of these contests, Charles Walker, former vice chairman of the 1922 committee. You, of course, were the returning officer in 2019 when Boris Johnson and Jeremy Hunt went through to the final 2. Just remind us who you've supported in this first round.
I supported Penny Mordaunt.
And why was that?
I think she's fantastic. I think she's the reset we need. I'm not a very good talking head at promoting candidates because I've never done it before, but she's just got that X factor, I think.
And what do you think her 67 votes says about where we are now?
I thought that was a good result. I thought that was a good result with 8 candidates, and they all did pretty well. I mean, we lost 2. We lost Jeremy and Nadine. So there's 43 votes up for grabs in the next round. So I think the big question for the 1922 committee this evening will be where they set the cut-off threshold for the next round. This round it was 30. I reckon it will settle somewhere between 40 and 50 for the next round.
Why do you think that Sir Graham Brady didn't announce that just now? Because on Monday evening when he announced the rules, he and the 22 and the Tory board did say in the first round it's 30. Why has he not announced it just now?
Because you've got to see how many get through. If 4 had dropped out or 2 had dropped out, 1 had dropped out, that changes the mathematics, you see. So you've got to understand how many free votes there are and what the other remaining 6 candidates scored. So that's a decision best taken once you know what the first round of results are. You take it at each stage.
But we do know now, we know that Nadhim Zahawi, who got 25, has dropped out, and Jeremy Hunt, 18, so there's only 43 votes to play for. I'm surprised that Sir Graham hasn't announced the threshold. They haven't worked it out.
Well, it was only 15 minutes ago that the results were announced. Give them a break, Paul.
Yeah, but voting finished at 3:30.
Yeah, but they've got to sit down and work it out. They've got to sit down and work it out. And, of course, it's also the case that occasionally a candidate drops out.
Oh.
That's the other reason. So in 2019, although Matt Hancock, I recall, made a threshold, he decided to withdraw. So you've got to talk to the candidates after the result is announced and make sure that all 6 want to carry on. And I suspect they will in this case, or whether 1 or 2 want to drop out at this stage. So it takes a little bit of time.
So you think the threshold in round 2 needs to be somewhere between 40 and 50?
I mean, I don't think it, but I think that's where it might settle, somewhere between 40 and 50. I'm not on the 22 anymore. I believe that's where it will settle, somewhere between 40 and 50, but of course I could be wrong on that.
Well, that would make people like Suella Braverman only 32, Tom Tugendhat 37, possibly Kemi Badenoch 40, the most vulnerable of the ones who are left, wouldn't it? Do you think some of the candidates will drop out?
I don't, no, because it was quite an aggressive threshold for the first round. It was over 30 for the first round. In 2019 it was 17. So I think if you've scored 32 and you're Suella, there's 43 votes out there, you're going to say, right, I think I can go and get 8 of those or 10 of those or maybe 15 of those, so I'm going to carry on.
How significant is it, you think, that Mr Sunak is ahead by 21, ahead of Penny Mordaunt, 88 to 67? Does that matter? You're supporting Penny Mordaunt. I mean, I spoke to a cabinet minister who said to me, Penny Mordaunt won't pick up that many more because the candidates who drop out will go to Truss and Sunak. What do you think about that?
Oh, there's all sorts of kidology. People love to speculate. Look, I'm really pleased Penny is performing well. I hope she makes it to the final 2. But look, I'm not going to be distraught if she gets there and Rishi wins, for example, because I'm a Conservative. I want my candidate to win, I really do, but that's why I'm supporting her. But we've got a lot of good candidates in this contest, and first and foremost, I'm a member of the Conservative Party, then secondly, at the moment, I'm a member of the Penny Mordaunt team, but I want a good contest. OK, thank you very much. I'm sure we will get a good contest.
So there we have, from someone who has been a returning officer, the prediction that the threshold next time will be somewhere between 40 and 50 to get into round 3. Sophie.
It will be really interesting to see that the thresholds make all the difference, don't they? John Craig there reporting for us in Portcullis House. Well, I'm here in Central Lobby with our Deputy Political Editor, Sam Coates. It's the first time we've actually seen real numbers, isn't it? We've had a lot of words, but now we've finally got a sense, I guess. MPs have had to put their money where their mouth is. What do you make of the numbers we've seen?
So I think the most important thing to tell viewers is when you look at those numbers on the screen at the moment, what's the hurdle they've got to get down to? Now, the whole job of the MPs rounds is to get this down to the last 2. In order to do that, you basically need to get a third of the vote plus 1. In other words, when you look at the numbers on the screen, each contender is looking at getting to 119 in order to get into the last 2. So if you look at that, Rishi Sunak's number, Rishi Sunak is just 31 votes away from getting in the final 2, and that could come from some of the Tom Tugendhat votes, perhaps some of those voting for Kemi Badenoch. So perhaps he's got the smallest distance, but it's not that big a distance to travel, 31 votes. Penny Mordaunt, well, she's got to get 52 votes in order to get into the final 2. Liz Truss is, as I was saying earlier, slightly surprising, down on 50 votes. So there you've got 79 votes effectively needing to get there. So that's the margin. 31 votes is all that Rishi needs to get to be the first person in the final 2. The question, can he do it given all of the criticism he's getting from others in this race?
It is all about momentum, isn't it? Sam, thank you very much indeed. Sam Coates there underlined that the winning line is 119 votes. There'll be more voting going on tomorrow, but certainly we are at a stage now where 2 people have been eliminated today, Nadhim Zahawi and Jeremy Hunt. All eyes now on where their support goes. Well, joining us now to discuss this is Teresa Villiers, who is supporting Rishi Sunak. Why did you decide to give your vote to Mr Sunak?
Because I think he's got the experience, the ability and the plan to get us through these difficult economic times we're going through. And I also believe, speaking as someone as a so-called Brexit Spartan who very much supported our vote to leave, that he will take forward the Northern Ireland Protocol and safeguard our union with Northern Ireland, which is also crucial.
It's interesting to hear, from you as someone who did back Brexit, that you're going for Rishi Sunak. I mean, I was speaking to Suella Braverman earlier, who said she thinks she's the only authentic Brexiteer in the race. David Davis is going for Penny Mordaunt. Why do you think Rishi Sunak is a person who can deliver on Brexit?
He voted for it in the referendum at a stage when he'd only been in Parliament a year or so. That would have been a tough decision to take. He believes in it. He's actually been implementing it with his financial services reforms so that on areas like Solvency II, we take our own decisions rather than accepting EU laws. And, crucial of all, to make a success of Brexit, we have to make a success of the economy. And he showed during the pandemic that he's calm in a crisis and he can deliver huge schemes like the furlough scheme, and he's the one who can help us get through this inflation spike.
I just wonder, are you worried that some of the momentum of Rishi Sunak's campaign seems to be seeping away? We have a YouGov poll out today, a poll of party members that put Penny Mordaunt by far and away the most popular candidate among members. And actually in a two-way runoff, Rishi Sunak only managed to beat Nadhim Zahawi.
Well, Rishi actually outpolls all the other contenders when you go to members of the general public. I think he's made a really good start today, but absolutely this is going to be a close-fought contest. We've got some truly excellent leadership contenders, but I will be strongly campaigning for Rishi, and I think he's got a very good chance of winning.
All eyes as well, I guess, on the race for second place. He's far and away above the others in terms of declared MP backers, and also in the first round there. It feels like there's quite an interesting tussle going on between Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss, would you say?
There certainly is, yes. And as ever, these contests are highly unpredictable, which is why the phones will be ringing hot this evening and over the next few hours before the next round.
And I guess everyone's going to be tapping up those supporters of Nadhim Zahawi and Jeremy Hunt to try and persuade them over into the different camps.
There will be no escaping for those people on those teams. They will be very, very popular this evening.
I just wonder, do you think that there is an issue for Rishi Sunak where if you're someone, an MP or indeed a party member who doesn't like Boris Johnson, you think, well, this is a man who was beside Boris Johnson throughout the pandemic, who was his Chancellor until very recently. But then if you're a pro-Boris Johnson supporter, you think this is someone who resigned against Boris Johnson. Do you think that's a difficult place for Rishi Sunak to be pitching himself?
What is more important, I think, is that experience as Chancellor of the Exchequer. I think it is much harder for someone to step up from a lower profile, more junior level. And that's one of the things that gives me confidence that Rishi is the right man to become our Prime Minister. He can hit the ground running because of that experience in government and also experience of the severe crisis that we faced in the COVID pandemic.
But then again, he also has a record to be judged on. Jacob Rees-Mogg, I think, describes him as a socialist chancellor.
He has a record to be judged on, but that includes acting phenomenally fast during the pandemic with the furlough scheme. That includes delivering real Brexit regulatory reform. And that includes cutting taxes. Yes, overall the tax burden is higher than we'd like it to be in order to fund the COVID backlog in the NHS. But he is determined to get us through this inflation crisis and get our taxes down.
How difficult a position do you think the Conservative Party is in right now? You've had the first ever Prime Minister to be fined in office. You've had, of course, going through a leadership election where, with the greatest will in the world, people will be trying to tear strips off other candidates as that race hots up. Are you concerned about the standing that the Conservatives are currently in with the general public?
The events that led to the resignation of Boris Johnson have been deeply damaging for the government and the Conservative Party. That's why we must use this leadership race to start to restore that trust, to demonstrate that we're going to be delivering on the issues that matter to people. I think much good work was done by the outgoing Prime Minister. But there is a great deal more work to do. But unfortunately, I believe I have to go and vote right now, so I may have to dash off into the division lobby.
OK, that sounds very fair enough. Thank you very much for coming on the programme, Teresa Villiers there. Well, that bell keeps ringing in. That's because there are actually lots of votes going on tonight. So MPs are darting in and out of central lobby. I can see Teresa Villiers actually running away there to make sure she gets there on time. Well, I have a statement that I can bring you right now from Nadhim Zahawi. He, of course, was one of the candidates, the two candidates to be knocked out this round after only polling 25 MPs to support him. He has given a statement to say, "I love my country and I love my party. I'm a proud Briton and a proud Conservative. With humility and a sense of duty, I accepted the position of Chancellor of the Exchequer because I wanted to serve my country and the British people. I stood for the position of leader of the Conservative Party because I have a passionate vision for the United Kingdom that I want to see, one where ability, skills and productivity are the key to achieving success and where there is opportunity for all. I came to this country with very little," he goes on to say, and has given me everything. I've lived the British dream. I was driven to enter politics to help others. He then goes on to effectively accept his defeat. He says, "Clearly, my part in the contest has now ended. My priority is my work as Chancellor of the Exchequer." He then goes on to say, "I don't intend to make any further intervention, but I wish all the candidates in the leadership contest the very best of luck." So that was the statement from Nadhim Zahawi, the man who many saw as one of the favourites going into this competition, but he didn't manage to clear the required 30 MPs coming out to support him. He says, interestingly, that he isn't going to be making any further intervention in the contest. In other words, he isn't going to be endorsing another candidate. Instead, he is going to be focusing on his work as Chancellor. But of course, I guess those phones are going to be ringing for all those 25 MPs who backed Nadhim Zahawi as the other camps tried to hoover them up. Well, let's take a look now at what happened in the House of Commons today at Prime Minister's Questions. It was only at 12 o'clock, but it feels like a lifetime ago already. And it was all about the current resident of 10 Downing Street, with Boris Johnson facing MPs for the first time since announcing his resignation. Our political correspondent Ali Fortescue analyses what happened in PMQs Unwrapped.
A week since the undignified collapse of Boris Johnson's government, he was back in the chamber for his first Prime Minister's Questions since agreeing to go. But first, there was an unusual and chaotic start.
Neil Hamby, I am now naming you and Kenny McCaskill to leave this chamber. Sergeant, deal with them. Deal with them. Take them out, Sergeant. Get them out.
Two MPs thrown out for protesting in the chamber. When it did come to the Prime Minister, he was perhaps not his usual buoyant self so soon after being ousted by his own party. But he was colourful in his criticism of Labour.
I think it's possible, Mr. Speaker, he's referring not to me, but to some of the 8 brilliant candidates who are currently vying for my job. Any one of them would wipe the floor with Captain Crasheroony's snooze fest, Mr. Speaker. And after a few weeks' time, that is exactly what they will do. They will unite around the winner and do just that.
And the Prime Minister was definitely in legacy-making mode.
And it's perfectly true that I leave not at a time of my choosing. And I will be leaving, Mr. Speaker, I will be leaving soon with my head held high.
With the leadership race underway, Labour were keen to broaden their criticism onto the man who may well replace Boris Johnson.
I really am going to miss this weekly nonsense from him. Let's move on from his current Chancellor to his former Chancellor. Last week, he resigned. Yesterday, he claimed his big plan is to rebuild the economy. Now, even the Prime Minister must be impressed by that Johnsonian brass-neckery.
And the mood on the Tory benches was notably rowdier today. Last week's stony faces were replaced by loud cheers when the Prime Minister arrived.
Step up to support the child in crisis. Yes.
On the New Look front bench, some of those hoping to replace Boris Johnson.
Can I say on behalf of the people of Redcar and Cleveland how grateful we are for the support that he's given us.
Can I thank the Prime Minister for delivering Brexit and the fantastic vaccine rollout programme?
Can I thank the Prime Minister for all he's done to help level up Stoke-on-Trent?
I would like to first send a huge thanks for your support to Ukraine.
Boris Johnson's due to appear opposite Starmer for the last time next week. But today, a strange hint that this could be his last PMQs.
The next leader of my party may be elected by acclamation, so it's possible this will be our last confrontation over this. It's possible. So I want to thank him. I want to thank him for the style in which he's conducted himself. I think it'd be fair to say he's been considerably less lethal than many other members of this House.
The loyally Labour leader and the unconventional Boris Johnson. It is hard to imagine two more different opponents. The noise was certainly back on the Tory benches today, but the fight to save Boris Johnson is over, and Labour may well soon be facing a very different kind of opponent.
We were voting Boris, weren't we? So we were on the same thing again. Yeah.
Well, we're joined now by two MPs who are voting for different candidates, or have voted already for different candidates, shall we say. We've got Anne-Marie Trevelyan, the former Cabinet Minister, who is backing Tom Tugendhat, and also, I shouldn't say former, should I? Still Cabinet Minister, apologies. And also Justin Tomlinson, who is supporting Kemi Badenoch. And you actually resigned from your position in order to support Kemi Badenoch's bid to get the job.
Yeah, and I was really excited by Kemi. I didn't know her personally. I've seen her perform in select committees, interministerial meetings, and she just had that ability to engage, to excite. And you as a journalist will know the frustration when politicians don't want to answer questions. And with Kemi, she's willing to challenge that consensus standard and just brings a bit of excitement back to politics. And as somebody who's responsible for supporting our colleagues ahead of their respective re-election campaigns, campaigning is my thing. I think she offers us that best opportunity to renew and secure that unprecedented fifth term in office.
She hasn't done much in the way of broadcast interviews yet, though, has she?
But if we can get her to those TV hustings at the weekend, and that was our aim, and to come to get those 40 votes, to finish ahead of some very strong candidates, Suella and Tom, shows that we're the candidate, Kemi's the candidate that has got the momentum. This is beyond our expectations, and we're very excited about what this offers. Colleagues are queuing up to come and talk to Kemi now. They can see the momentum.
You backed Tom Tugendhat, and some people would look, at your sort of record, whether it's on Brexit or someone who I guess is a Boris Johnson loyalist in some ways. Why are you backing Tom Tugendhat? He is saying he wants to offer a fresh start, a clean start from Boris Johnson.
So I'm backing Tom because I think he brings a real centre groundness to politics, which I think is important now as we go forwards. As Justin says, the challenge of winning a historic fifth term in 2 years' time. We need a Prime Minister who's going to be able to harness all our parties, both talents, energies and cohesion, so that we can move forwards and tackle some of the really difficult issues that we've got on our plate at the moment. I'm continuing to work on issues Ukraine whilst we go through this process. Those important issues there. The energy crisis is one that we have to tackle. Tom has made, if you like, an emergency commitment already that he would take 10p off the fuel duty for an understanding that there is some really urgent issues there that need tackling. And I genuinely believe he will be able to cohere our party across the board so that we can work together both at pace and with some difficult decisions that will need to be made in the coming year.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because the fight, in many ways, on the Kemi Badenoch side, on the right of the party, the kind of pro-Brexit wing of the party, there's quite a few candidates still in the race, and yet Kemi Badenoch, polling 40 votes today. Do you hope, I guess, that some of the other people who may be clamouring for the same votes, such as Suella Braverman, might fall into line?
Well, I think what Kemi offered was that ability to appeal to the broad church that is the Conservative Party. I'm not part of any wing. But what I want to see us do is win that fifth general election. What we have to be focused on is there is every chance we could hand the government to a rainbow coalition. That is a very realistic prospect. We've not had a good few months. We've not covered ourselves in glory. Kemi is that genuine fresh start that is engaging and is exciting. We saw this when David Cameron stood for the leadership. We saw this even further back with Margaret Thatcher. That outsider, she's gone from a standing start. We didn't even have a website until about 24 hours ago. We were still designing the logo ahead of the launch, and 40 colleagues have put their faith in her, and now other colleagues are queuing up to have that conversation with her. And when they do, they will see how exciting and engaging she is.
It's interesting. I did hear you say that you've done beyond your expectation. Did you think that she might not actually make it this far?
Well, it's very difficult Some colleagues are they guard their which way they're going to go, wait to see which way the wind is going to go. The key for us was to get over that 30 mark. If you don't get to that 30 mark, out you go. And she's gone well beyond that. And I think of all of the standout results, nobody expected her to do that well. That's what creates momentum. That's what creates interest and intrigue. And then with Kemi's ability to engage, I think we've got every chance of getting it to the TV hustings at the weekend. The public will see what she has to offer, and that's where the momentum will flow.
Tom Tugendhat on, I think, 37 votes, so clearing the 30-vote margin. But I guess he is a bit of an outsider as well, I guess, like Kemi Badenoch too. Do you think he's going to make it to the next round?
So yes, I have every confidence that we will do that. And as Justin says, colleagues are notoriously both secretive and indeed fickle in the way they use their votes. In each ballot, they make a conscious decision as they look at those who remain in the race, and they think about what their both constituency issues might be that they will want a Prime Minister to champion for them, and indeed, really importantly, I think for all of us and every candidate and every supporter is the same, which is we are very aware that in 2024 the risk of not winning that election means the risk of a rainbow coalition for the country, and that would be a disaster.
Now, you've both given a pitch for your candidates. I just want to have a look at the top echelons of the race. Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss. Who do you think the momentum is with?
I think it's Kemi. I think it is Kemi.
Come on.
Well, genuinely,
I've asked you to park you've spoken about Kemi with the three contenders at the top.
They were the established candidates who have been well organised for a reasonable length of time. And who blames them? You know, people are ambitious. I have no issue with that at all. But to go from 0 to 40 from a standing start without even a campaign website shows that my colleagues are excited by what she has to offer. And now she's shown she's a serious candidate. That's where the momentum is.
Are you going to answer the question? Who do you think out of the top three, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss, who do you think's got the momentum?
Well, I think Rishi is still the one to beat, but I think the reality is that we will see all our colleagues voting, moving their votes around over the next 24 hours again to try and push those whose positions are ones that they are closest down to, having perhaps shared their votes to get their candidates across the line today.
Yeah, interesting stuff. I have to say, quite good to see colleagues, I guess, not tearing strips off each other.
We've got to unite. Whoever wins, 100%. We've got to unite. I mean, we were both Team Boris, and we've got some fantastic, talented people in the party. And whoever wins, they've got to bring the broad church together.
Are you a bit worried about the tone of some of the debates, some of the briefings that are going to happen?
So this is always a brutal fortnight. The Conservative Party has a brutal but very efficient way of choosing a new leader. We are all robust creatures, and we have an array of talent which colleagues will choose and filter through. And I have no doubt we will give our party members two great candidates to decide upon.
Because we've got a responsibility to govern.
Absolutely.
And with the immediate pressures of cost of living, we owe it to the country to get this sorted quickly and do it in a united way. One way or another, we will get there.
OK, thank you very much, Justin Thomason and Marie Trevelyan there. Quick tweet to bring you now. This is a reaction from Suella Braverman MP. She's tweeted to say, "Thank you to my colleagues who voted for me today. I'm pleased to be into the next round of voting. Hashtag Suella for leader." Suella Braverman there, just clearing the 30-vote threshold by just 2 votes in order to make it into the next round of voting. Sam Coates, you are with us, our Deputy Political Editor. Interesting hearing from the different MPs drumming up support for their candidates, but we are starting to see, I guess, some of the front runners really starting to show.
That's right. There are 2 big conversations going on at the moment. Who are the front runners, and then who tomorrow is going to be knocked out? And you've got to look at the last 2 on the list that just made it over the hurdle. Tom Tugendhat and Suella Braverman. Now, both are putting on brave faces, but in 24 hours' time, one of them is going to be out of this race. Some on Tom Tugendhat's campaign suggesting actually it would be quite wise for Suella to pull out this evening, but there's none of that talk from Suella Braverman's campaign at the moment. Meanwhile, at the other end of the campaign, Rishi Sunak, Penny Mordaunt and Liz Truss, the conversation in this room, some surprise that Liz Truss has not done as well as some had expected, given the scale expectation around her campaign. 50 votes, a full 38 votes less than Rishi Sunak suggests that he is outperforming her. Rishi Sunak now just 31 away from that hurdle of 119 that you need to get in the final 3. the great wild card today, the great surprise in this race, wasn't at the cabinet table before, Penny Mordaunt. Does she represent the kind of fresh start that the leadership want? And is she the person who's going to take everyone forward?
Well, really interesting to talk. Sam Coates there, our Deputy Political Editor, giving his view on the contest. And we are starting to see, I think, some of the MPs really pulling away from others. Rishi Sunak, obviously at the top there on 88, but second place, Penny Mordaunt, Liz Truss in third. Well, I think we can speak now to Steve Baker, Conservative MP, backer of Suella Braverman. She just limped over